They're still not sure about Bitcoin, whether it can fail or not. For me personally, the 100K mark last year was like super, super big. This is actually also the point where I invested actually most of my fiat money in Bitcoin, because for me, it was just a mental barrier. Yeah. For me, it was like, look, if we hit 100K, we will hit 1 million. We will hit 10 million. Yeah. And I think what people don't understand about Bitcoin as money or like as medium of exchange, it's a network effect. Like Bitcoin is the only asset which gets more and more attractive the bigger it gets, and there's the less and less risk the higher it goes. And with all of the other assets, it's completely the opposite.
Today, I'm excited to welcome Alexander Eser to the podcast. Alexander is a capitalist, Bitcoin advocate, and the author of Monetary Anarchy, The Separation of Money and State. Welcome to the Bitcoin Edge.
Hey, Paula, super great to be here. Thank you for the invitation.
Yeah, I've been looking forward to chatting with you. Before we get to your book and other Bitcoin subjects, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you found Bitcoin.
Yeah, so I'm an economist by training, so I have a degree in economics and also a master's in finance. However, after university, I actually started a tech company in a software space and also like online marketing, let's just say digital in general, and founded within the space like 3 companies over the past 8 years. Yeah, some were successful, others not so much, but as entrepreneurship. First, I actually discovered Bitcoin in 2017, but while the first bull run. However, to be honest, I didn't really have the time to study it. So for me, it was just like criminals on the internet, speculating with some online currency. So I basically dismissed it. However, I rediscovered it in COVID or during COVID. During my studies, I actually was always, let's just say, inclined to the Austrian School of Economics. But made much more sense to me than all of the Keynes bullshit, more or less. Excuse my language. But I couldn't really like relate the Austrian stuff to let's just say to like the real world. But then when I found Bitcoin, everything clicked, and then like probably all of us, I spent my 1,000 hours of studying it. So one part of me is like very happy that we had COVID, because otherwise I wouldn't have had the time to study it.
And not only did you study it, but you wrote a book. Tell us about your book and why you wrote it.
Yeah. I mean, I know it's a little bit of an exaggeration if you are like that obsessed with it, right? If you're basically, you study something for a year and then afterwards you're like, hey, let's write a book, right? But I really had the urge to contribute to the whole Bitcoin movement, because I really think, Bitcoin needs advocates. As an entrepreneur, you're all about agency and liberty. And I'm always asking myself, okay, if you don't do it, who will do it, right? Like, and the answer is nobody. So for me, it was really, really important that at least I have my name out there and to advocate for Bitcoin. And the goal of my book is more or less to save others the time to study 1,000 hours. Because at the end of the day, you have to understand many, many different topics, right? So you have to understand money, you have to understand banking, you have to understand politics, philosophy, how does the state work, like super, and then also like on a technical level, you have to understand how like a blockchain works. You have to understand why Bitcoin is better, and so on and so on. And I think at the end, I read more than like 50 to 100 books, right? And it's a lot of time. And I have one favorite book of mine. It's called The Lessons of History by William Arian Durant, where they are basically summarizing the lessons of 10,000 years of humanity within 100 pages. I was like, okay, if they can teach you about all of humanity within 100 pages, what excuse do I have, to write more about Bitcoin than 100 pages? So the idea was really to summarize everything. I mean, not even summarize, but also obviously my own opinion, but more to have like this thread through the Bitcoin literature. So that it makes sense, right? Because where do you even start? Do you start with economics? Do you start with finance? Do you start with tech? So for many people, it's like really difficult to start somewhere and then to piece it all together. So the idea of the book was to answer all of the important questions. Yeah, like what is fiat? Why does the state control fiat? Why do we actually need states? Can we also live without a state? What is this Bitcoin thing, and how might Bitcoin be adopted by humanity? And these are all of the questions I answer in the book, because I thought like, okay, the most important thing I can contribute is more or less education.
And is it available in English and German?
Only English for now. I was a little bit lazy with the German. So many people also here in Germany were asking me, hey, can you actually translate it? But yeah, I mean, I need more time, right? So like all of us. So for now, only English, but in the future, hopefully also like German and all of the other European languages.
Good for us English speakers. You focus a lot on the separation of money and state. And how would that actually look like? It seems today where the state is very comfortable to control and to get more and more involved in our lives. So how would that look like?
Yeah, I mean, I think the interesting thing is if like all of us were to adopt Bitcoin as our main vehicle of savings, right? So as like our savings account, the state would actually have a really hard time to keep their fiat scheme going. But so it's really a question of education. Because when you compare fiat to Bitcoin, the one thing that fiat, or where I also have to admit, where fiat has like a big advantage, it gave the state flexibility, right? So in the past 50 years, we had this tremendous arc of growth globally, and you really needed an expanding money supply in order to accommodate all of this growth. Because on a Bitcoin standard, obviously, it takes much longer to build something, because before you can build, you need to save. And then you use those savings as an investment. And based on this investment, you can build your company or you can build whatever you want. In the fiat credit-based system, you do not need to save, right? So because you can just take a credit. So what are you doing? You're basically pulling the future forward, and then you can grow faster. This makes total sense if the system is not like financialized to the end, right? So let's just say after the Second World War, the globe had really this capacity, or like the global economy had the capacity to grow. But nowadays, it's completely crazy. You have those apps like those buy now, pay later apps, where you can actually finance your groceries. Yeah. So this is complete fiat madness. So I think we are at the point where growth should not be our main thought when we think about money, but rather sustainable growth, or rather growth which does make sense, because there are so many projects which get funding. I think we see this in all of the altcoin space, like all of the crypto projects besides Bitcoin. All of the stuff wouldn't get funding without fiat, because fiat creates so much waste that all of this is not fundable. Because if you have to save money before you start a project, I mean, would you start, let's just say, crypto project number 1000? Obviously not, right? So I think we are really at the point where we should really think about, okay, how should the future of humanity look like? Then to like really like think about, does it make sense to fund project number A or B, for instance? And now coming back to like, let's just say the separation of money and state, I think where the big difference is between classic academic thinking from the inside and then all of this Bitcoin thinking from the outside is that we Bitcoiners, we think money is a product from the market or based on the market. Yeah. So the market really decides what is money. And the modern monetary theorists and all of the fiat academics, they think that the state has a monopoly on money, right? So they can decide what money is. They can tell us, and we just have to use it. And I think there will be like a super big diversions in the future, because I think most of us still earn our money in fiat. However, if we, as I said before, save this money in Bitcoin, over time we will definitely like defund the state, and then for them it will be harder and harder to keep up with their monopoly, because at some point the credit-based system just gets too big, and then it will just implode. And then the question is, what happens afterwards? And obviously, I hope that afterwards people will adopt Bitcoin as their main medium of exchange instead of the fiat currencies.
Yeah, that's what we all hope. But I think it's a little more hope, because it's the best decentralized money that we've ever seen. And do you think it's going to take a major shift in humanity, in humanity's thinking, and even spiritually to adopt Bitcoin?
Yeah, I mean, that's also super interesting question I was thinking about a lot over the past 2 years, because as I said, like the book came out 2 years ago, or it was when I like initially wrote it. And at the time, I think like all of us, you have this urge inside of you. You want to tell everybody about Bitcoin. Yeah, you basically just discovered a secret, and now everybody needs to know the secret. And you just expect, okay, if the other person would really understand the secret, then they would also adopt Bitcoin, just like you. Because all of the projects I'm doing nowadays, like my thinking is really, okay, should I rather invest in Bitcoin or should I rather invest in this project? And what changed in my mind over the past 2 years is if somebody wants to talk about Bitcoin, I'm like, let's talk about it. I'm super happy to talk to, but I'm not trying to convince anybody anymore, because I really think that over time the market will convince people when all of their purchasing power get eroded by inflation. And unfortunately, pain is still the best teacher for human beings. It's just what it is. And this led me to the conclusion that, what is truth? What is reality? The answer I have there is, whatever we humans make out of it, right? Like if everybody on planet Earth would say 2 plus 2 equals 5 instead of 4, and one person knows, no, 2 plus 2 equals 4. What does it help you if everybody else thinks it's 5, right? So if all of their systems, if like all of their calculations is based on a fact, or it's based on the perception 2 plus 2 is 5, the unfortunate truth is you are the crazy one because you think that it's 4. I think this explains a little bit our current state with Bitcoin. The Bitcoiners, we know Bitcoin is truth. Bitcoin is actual money. So we know 2 plus 2 is 4. Everybody else, like the 7.9 other billion people on planet Earth, they say 2 plus 2 is 5. So now the question is, are we the crazy ones or are they the crazy ones? Probably over time, history will prove us right. Because if you build bridges based on the assumption 2 plus 2 is 5, your engineering is flawed, and all of these bridges, they will break down at some point. However, people need to see those bridges breaking down before they accept the fact that 2 plus 2 equals 4. And until then, reality is whatever humanity as a whole says what reality is. And I think when it comes to Bitcoin, let's be honest, there is gold for thousands of years. If everybody would stand up and educate themselves and would say like, hey, we actually want a gold standard. We want hard and sound money. Politicians would not be able to keep up their fiat scheme, but people are not demanding it, right? So I started to think a little bit like, okay, why is that? Because before Bitcoin, there was gold. So in theory, at least there was the possibility. And yes, I know the central banks, they try to manipulate the gold market and so on. I know all of this. However, if everybody would stand up and demand a hard, sound money standard, it's not possible to uphold this charade, right? And then you have to ask yourself, okay, why is that? And I really came to the conclusion, actually, the fiat system is really a really, really good mirror for our own urges as humans, because we humans, we are like really, really bad at like long-term thinking. And I think obviously, yes, there are people who can do it, but most people, they are not, they're like super short-term focused. And this fiat system fits perfectly our personality as humans in general. So I really think that this shift from fiat to Bitcoin will not only be a shift from fiat money to sound money, but more like a spiritual battle from, okay, we as humans, we are like short-term focused to more of like a long-term focus orientation.
Yes. Yeah, a lot of the people I speak to on my podcast express similar views. The low time preference thinking that we get from Bitcoin, because I didn't have that before. I was in the fiat mindset, right? Because it's not something you necessarily think about. It's almost like a subconscious knowing my money is going down, so I better spend it unless you're educated to buy assets. And that is why the wealthy buy assets and they can beat the system that way. But if you are not aware of that, you are going to lose against the fiat system and fall right into the trap.
Yeah, and then you have a really, really big problem because all of the asset holders get rich, and the others they don't. And it's funny because like relating this to current events, this is also something I was thinking a lot during the past, let's just say weeks and months, because right now with the Trump tariffs, you have this move like the old system, right? So this like Washington consensus, where the idea was, okay, open borders, free trade, backed by the American Pax Americana military system. Yeah, so the US is like police officer of the world. And now you basically move to, let's just say, this Trump tariff system, where you have closed borders, you have restricted trade, and you have this multipolar world, yeah, where everybody has to look out for their own security. I mean, here in Germany, I think in the past 3 weeks, they came together and decided to get together, I think, 1 trillion in debt in order to, let's just say, protect Europe, or to buy weapons. And like the question I really ask myself is, okay, like, what does humanity actually want? Or let's just say you are the average citizen. Like, in which system are you better off? The explanation, or like the hard truth is, because obviously, like as a capitalist, I'm like also for like free enterprise, free trade, no borders, and so on and so on. Yeah, this is also, let's just say, where I'm coming from originally. But then I was like really like thinking not about myself, because I'm also in this class of asset holders. Yeah, for me, the system with open borders and free trade is much better, because obviously you have economic growth, my assets grow, and so on. And then in theory, like every year I have to work less. But the reality is, I only need to work less because others have to work more. So, and then when you like think about the average person, I was really like honest to myself, and I was like, shit, like for the average person, what do they want? Yeah, they want a normal, happy life. Usually people don't want immigration at like a super big scale. Obviously, you will always have immigration and emigration, but people don't want immigration up to the point where like the whole culture is changed. Or here in Germany, we had a like super big discussion about security in the streets, yeah, because we had a lot of like stabbings and so on, like in the UK. And I was like, okay, the average person just wants like a secure job, and they actually want like a safe job, and then they want to live a normal life with their friends. Yeah, they don't want to think about money. Most people, I think, if you ask them directly, what do you prefer? Do you prefer like a stable job, which earns you like a middle class income? Or do you prefer, like open borders, and then maybe, yeah, the phone you can buy from America or from China is a little bit better and a little bit cheaper than the phone you would manufacture in Germany. And personally, I came to the realization, I think that the average person is far better off in the system we are heading towards. At least like in this fiat world, obviously the best system would be Bitcoin, right? But I'm also a little bit like a realist, where you have to reality. Yeah, I'm really intrigued right now what's happening. This like big break in the system already, with like asset holders versus non-asset holders, and what will happen there, because I think we're like living in interesting times, because at the end of the day we are at the end of like a monetary like regime of the past 50 years.
So do you think that the Trump tariffs are like a large last-ditch effort to try to save the system? And I know you've said it probably won't work. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, so I actually think that the tariffs, they are like the last attempt to let's just say save the fiat scheme, because usually, like, what do you do before a system stops to work, right? You try to prolong it with like all of the tools at your disposal. And currently, I feel like what Trump is doing is he tries to, keep all of the benefits of the fiat system. So basically, he still wants to have the world reserve currency. Yeah. So he wants to keep all of the positives, but then get rid of all of the negatives. Because obviously, this Pax Americana only worked if Trump also, or like if the US paid for the security of the EU. So what is he doing? Yeah, he tries to get rid of all of the negatives, which is like paying for security and military, but then also keeping the reserve currency. Yeah, and then the other negative is obviously that all of, let's just say, the middle class jobs, yeah, they went to China, Latin America, Southeast Asia. This is why you have this super big wealth dispersion in the US right now. I think your Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent, in an interview over the past days, he said that at the same time, they had record numbers in travel to Europe, and at the same time, record numbers in people getting food stamps. The asset holders, they get like super rich over the past 5 years, but at the same time, you have so many more people who just have big money problems. I'm a super big fan of alternative data because, like, let's just say all of the official statistics, to me, they're all fake. Yeah. So I really try to think for myself, okay, how do I see this? Yeah. Like what's my angle here? And one of my favorite data sources, here it comes, is actually OnlyFans. Yeah. So this app where you can make money showing your body and texting with people for sexual services. And OnlyFans is like the biggest thing in the US, right? Here in Germany, if you ask anybody, hey, do you have OnlyFans? Obviously, no, right? Because you don't need it. But people like in the US really need it to make money because they try to make ends meet, like however they can. And so I really see this like super big wealth dispersion, and what Trump, I think, is trying to achieve to make this right. Yeah. So that asset holders will not be that happy over the Trump years, I think. But I really think it's necessary to, let's just say, reset the system a little bit so he can keep it going. But in my mind, yeah, he can try it. Maybe Vance, after him, his VP, will uphold it for 4 more years or maybe even for 8 more years. But, like if I look down the road, 2035, yeah, it will crash. Yeah, they can do whatever they want. It's just mathematics. At this point, it's over. They just prolonged the eventual fall, but it will fall. For me, this is a complete certainty.
Yeah, it's still a debt-based system, even though exactly they might prolong it a little bit. I do think one thing, Trump himself is a big asset holder, and most of his friends and family are too. So I think really his goal is to also improve for them in the long run too. He wants it all, for sure. He wants it all.
Yeah, sure. I mean, like for me, I can a little bit, let's just say, yeah, not relate to him, but I can only give you, let's just say, the outside look from Europe. Here in Europe, obviously, I would say 99 people out of 100 really hate him. I'm the one guy who actually likes him. But for me, it's a little bit big because here in Europe, we are not used to his methods. For people here, he's far too aggressive. And he has no manners, like he's not asking, he's just doing, yeah. And here in Europe, we don't live like this, yeah. So it's very hard for people to relate to him. But how I see him is, I actually think he's at the point in his life where he is actually a good guy, like I really think he means well to the average citizen, but he wants to get paid for it. Yeah. So he's like, hey, I will really try to do good for you. But at the same time, I like to make money doing it because otherwise I would not do it. And I, like for me, with this, what you just said with this asset holder thing, that he's also a big asset holder and he wants to like pump his bags, maybe. But when he makes all of these tariff announcements and then he basically backtracks it, right? I think I've seen some charts on X where you can see like all of the insider trading, yeah. So where people basically front run his decisions, and I actually think a bit that like his sons, I don't know how the company is called. It was something with like World Liberty or something, and I actually think they get a lot of information, and they will, in my opinion, rather, let's just say, trade or make money trading this presidency rather than increasing the asset value.
Very interesting. Well, in there, you also mentioned that you also care about humanity because you yourself are an asset holder. I am too. But as Bitcoiners, we actually do care about not stealing from everybody else. So is that important to you in everything?
Yeah, absolutely. For me, this was also like a realization. I think I had like only after I wrote the book, or basically while I wrote the book, I was like, I'm actually on the good side of this. I actually have a big incentive that this just keeps going, because at the end of the day, if you know what you are doing, how to invest in the market, or like if you're just smart enough to understand in a fiat-based world, you can raise debt in order to buy income and cash flowing generating assets like real estate or like companies. If you only understand that, you can perfectly play the system, right? So, but like 99.9% of people don't understand it, right? So you have a super big advantage. And in the like last pages of my book, I was like, shit, should I actually like release this? Because that's bad, for me. But then like eventually, like also like my conclusion of the book is that the world, humanity in general, we have our best days ahead of us, and not basically on a Bitcoin standard. Because I'm always like, look, like we're 8 billion people. At the end of the day, when you look at science, it's like super centralized. Yeah, you have these 10 Ivy League universities in the US, then you have 10 elite universities in Europe, and then you have 10 elite universities in China. And then basically all of humanity's knowledge should come out of these 30 places. And I'm like, look, there are 5 billion people in Latin America, in Africa, in Southeast Asia. Like every day we have one more Elon Musk. But this person never gets to his like full opportunity set because he's just basically living in a debt-based system where the global north, like Europe, US, exploits the global south. Yeah, so they have to pay. I mean, I think you also know this whole story where we basically give, like the International Monetary Fund, we give a lot of debt and loans to the global south, and then they have to pay us back, right, in resources and so on and so on. So they can never basically develop their societies. And for me, I really think, like if we like level the playing field, yeah, like really have these decentralized institution, decentralized science, decentralized food, decentralized everything. I really think we have a lot more innovation in us, and then we can really move the world forward. Because when you think about, like over the past 30, 40 years, where did all of the like smartest people on earth go? Like all of the people, who do physics, chemics, material science, and so on and so on. They all work as traders on Wall Street. Yeah, I mean, these people should build rockets. And I'm always like, look, I'm not smart enough to build rockets. That's why I do, let's just say, tech business and finance stuff. But if you have the actual mental capability to move people, like move humanity forward, I mean, for me, it's so sad that we are not enabling these people, but we are basically pushing them into this, let's just say, fiat system. Basically, okay, if you want to get ahead as a physicist in this world, you have to work in finance. And I'm like, man, this is like such a waste of human potential. And so I really hope, that during my lifetime, I really see this change from like this fiat standard to the sound money standard, so we can really enable these millions of brilliant people out there to move us forward.
Yeah. And when we are on the Bitcoin standard, people have more time because, as you and I know, as we save in Bitcoin, our money value goes up. And back to the asset discussion, Bitcoin so far has been the best performing asset against everything, against real estate, against most stocks. So my question is, in the West, we often use Bitcoin as a store value. Will Bitcoin be able to survive if it doesn't also become a medium of exchange, as many people say, like Jeff Booth?
Yeah, I mean, I think the question is more or less about the timeline, right? Because if you put this on a, let's just say 100-year timeline, and then Bitcoin only reaches, let's just say, as, like right now, the store of value function, yeah, then I could definitely see a world where people lose interest, yeah? Because if Bitcoin is not growing, let's just say we would, Bitcoin would hold its value for the next 10 years and nothing would happen. Then I can definitely see a point where people are like, like, I don't know about this. A little bit what's happening to Ethereum right now. Yeah, it gets murdered by Bitcoin, and basically it just chops sideways. If you are, invested in Ethereum for the past 5 years, I think you actually lost money. Let's just say, if in 2050 Bitcoin is still at $60,000 per Bitcoin, and the fiat system already, like created much more debt, then I certainly see a point where people would be like, okay, it was a nice and interesting try, but it failed. And I think what Jeff says, and where I can definitely relate to him, is, if we also use Bitcoin as a medium of exchange, then the network effect only grows, right? Because I think he's not talking about cash or basically using Bitcoin as a consumer buying coffee. But I think if you talk about medium of exchange, or how I see it, let's just say you want to store 1 million USD, then and you use Bitcoin. For me, this is the store of value function. Let's just say if you are a company and you want to pay somebody in a different country, you are buying a machine, for instance, and this machine costs $50,000, and then you pay him in Bitcoin. because cross-border financing is much cheaper in Bitcoin, it's faster, and you don't pay like all of these fees if you move money from country A to B. For me, this is the medium of exchange function, right? So you have this big amount of money, you have to move, let's just say, from the US to the Philippines. And like this function of cash, this is buying a coffee at Starbucks. And to be honest, I think if we ever reach this point where people buy, let's just say, a $3.50 coffee with Bitcoin, I'm not sure. Because I think we will always have this fiat money in the front end a little bit for like these cash transactions to give the government at least a little bit of flexibility. And this is also fine. I think there are also some Bitcoin projects. I think I've read about one. I think it's called Cashew or something like this, or Fediment, where they're also trying to implement this cash function. I definitely think like Jeff, if Bitcoin will not be used in 20 years for these big transactions, these transactions where, let's just say in a fiat world, if you pay somebody 50,000 USD, you usually have to pay fees, whatever, $1,000. And if nobody is actually using it for that, where Bitcoin has a clear advantage and also like a clear benefit in terms of costs, and people are not using it, this would be like super sad. And I think then it would also fail over like let's just say long time horizon. But as I said, personally, how I view it, I think the next 10 years will be monetization. So I think currently we are at 2 trillion or around about that. I think we will catch up to gold rather quickly over the next 5 years, maybe. So my own target for 2030 is like a 10x from now, that we have parity with gold. And then, if we really overtake gold, this is really the point where the whole of Wall Street, where everybody has to say, look, okay, there must be something about it, because I think people are still in denial. People, they're still not sure. They're still not sure about Bitcoin, whether it can fail or not. For me personally, the 100K mark last year was like super, super big. This is actually also the point where I invested actually most of my fiat money in Bitcoin, because for me, it was just a mental barrier. For me, it was like, look, if we hit 100K, we will hit 1 million. We will hit 10 million. And I think what people don't understand about Bitcoin is, as money or like as medium of exchange, it's a network effect. Like Bitcoin is the only asset which gets more and more attractive the bigger it gets. And there's the less and less risk, the higher it goes. And with all of the other assets, it's completely the opposite. Nvidia, let's just say 3 trillion, it's much more risky than investing in it at 500 million, because for them to grow from 3 million to like 10 trillion, it's like much harder to get these growth rates at this valuation. And for Bitcoin, as it's like a monetary network, it's like less risky. The comparison I always make is like the only asset on, let's just say, the public stock market, which is similar to Bitcoin, is actually Meta or like Facebook, Instagram, and so on, right? Because when is it more risky to invest in Facebook? When they have like 10 million users, or when they have like 100 million users, or let's just say 1 billion users? And the answer is when it's smaller, because if Facebook only has 10 million users, there are other apps who can overtake them, right? But if they have 1 billion users, the network effect is so big, it's over, right? And I actually think this is like this 100K mark. This is actually the thing which also killed Ethereum, because this was the point when people understood it will never catch up. No other altcoin will ever catch up to Bitcoin. And this is why you have this like, super high Bitcoin dominance since last year, because people understood, like Bitcoin is like fire. The winner has been chosen. It's fucking over. And I think we as people in the Bitcoin space, because we also had, like most of us, had at least this little, let's just say, crypto period where everybody was looking into that. And I think crypto people, Bitcoin and crypto people, we as a group understood Bitcoin won. It's over. I mean, we Bitcoiners, we knew it all along. The others, they learned it right, or they're learning it right now. And I think when we overtake gold, this will also be the point where the broad majority will like understand, okay, it won. It's over. Like, okay, don't try it. And for me, this is the same like Facebook at 1 billion users. It won, and then Facebook went from, let's just say, 0 users to 1 billion users. I don't have the exact timeline, but let's just say over 10 years. But then from 1 billion to 4 billion, they went within 2 years. So for me, it will be the same, with Bitcoin. Yeah, maybe we will take another 5 years to get to 1 million, because if we flip gold, Bitcoin will be roundabout at 1 million. But then within 2 years, we will go from 1 million to 10 million. So I really think until 2035, we will hit the 10 million mark, and then after the 10 million mark, I think we are, let's just say, monetized, or Bitcoin is monetized, because then it will sit around about 100 trillion. And I think then, over the next decades, it will get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. But me personally, I will start spending my Bitcoin if we hit the 100 trillion, because then I can use it as medium of exchange. And then I also think that the growth rates will come down. So currently, I think if you average it out over the past 10 years, right, we are at a 30-40% growth rate, and I think we will keep growing 30-40-50% until we hit 100 trillion, and then the growth rates will decrease.
Wow, that's really interesting. That's pretty incredible. So the volatility will decrease when we get to that 100 trillion. And what you're saying, what's interesting to me is that you felt that at 100K, it was a better risk reward return. And I see why. So that's really cool to hear someone say that, though. I've heard that even now at around 85, it's a very good risk reward return.
Yeah, sure. I mean, like for me, like you can now Bitcoin is on complete sale. Yeah. Because, in my own mind, like this, okay, for me, it was a super, super big marker, because again, like if it hits 100, it hits 1 million. Yeah. It hits 10 million. It's just like this mental barrier. Yeah. Because I think, people were unsure, and even I was unsure, because when I got into Bitcoin, it was 69. Yeah. And then we crashed down to 16. Then I bought a lot, but at least for me, a lot, at 16K. Yeah. And then like this whole thing ran up to 100. And I was like, buying in between, a little bit there, a little bit here, but like nothing major. But then at 100K, I really said, this is happening. Yeah. Like, because before you was not, obviously I was convinced. Yeah. But like being convinced and put your money into it, they're like two different things, because then you have to have conviction, and you have to, like, in your mind, you have to be like, look, like we hit 100, and then maybe we hit 50 again, but I just know for a fact now it will hit the million, it will hit the 10 million. It just takes time, that's it. So this is why I think it's less risky now.
Yeah, that's really cool. Cool story. So you have said that we're at a technological crossroads, ultimate centralization versus decentralization. What do you mean by this?
Yeah, so I think when you look at the past 5 years, for me, it's totally crazy. On the one hand, we have, like obviously Bitcoin as a super big technological advancement. I think the whole world slept on it for the first 10 years, right? From 2009 to 2020, nothing happened there. And I still believe without COVID, we would still be sleeping on it. Yeah. But COVID basically pulled everything forward, because everybody had time to get into it. So we have this amazing decentralized money. And then on the other hand, we obviously have artificial intelligence, yeah, as this big deflationary force, where in theory everything could get basically, to the cost of production, super cheap. This future of abundance, where we all will live in this super great utopia. But now the question becomes for me a little bit like, what do we humans want, right? Because on the one hand, I see definitely a future where AI is super centralized. Yeah. What you have right now. Yeah. Anthropic, OpenAI, all of these AI labs, which are basically centralizing the access to AI. Or we can also see this open source movement. I think a couple of weeks ago, we had this big invention from China, DeepSeek, where they basically gave away their AI for free. And I think the world is really at a crossroads where we decide, okay, either we live in this 1984 world with like everything gets surveilled, AI will be everywhere, but more as a master, as a god or somebody who like enslaves humanity, or and then you have like all of the centralized control, because the other, let's just say, negative thing which is possible with AI is obviously it gets much easier to control people, because with media, then obviously fake media. And with AI, it's much easier to tell stories to people at scale, because you can really like personalize your media consumption. And AI in centralized hands could basically personalize the media consumption of everybody, and then everybody would basically do whatever the states want, right? So it's really up to the people to be educated about it, to really understand, okay, what's happening here. Because I think the big theater of our time is still, I mean, this was always the case, but not many people see it, but people, they get pushed from left to right. So political left to political right, and then it's just a pendulum with swings. And people don't understand that it's not about left and right. Yeah, it's about centralization versus decentralization. It's basically how many of your liberties you give up to the state. Because if the state has more and more and more power over you and your life, you lose, and then it doesn't make sense, and then it doesn't matter whether the politician is left or right. And yeah, if anybody wants to get into this, there's one person on X. She's based in Chile. I don't know. Do you know? She's called Whitney Webb.
Yes.
Yeah. I love her. At times she's a little bit too much for me, yeah, because she has many theories where I like, okay, it's a little bit too crazy and a little bit too conspiratory. However, I think her work, I mean, she does really, really great work to show that all politicians are bad. Personally, I like Trump much more than Biden, because Biden was a complete nutcase. However, Trump is also, he's also no good guy. Yeah. At the end of the day, the government is centralized power, and I'm for, as I said, like free enterprise and free markets and decentralization. So it's really up to us to bring those technologies to life, which will enable us to live this free life outside of government control. But I mean, I don't want to sound too pessimistic, because I know, like, Jeff and other Bitcoiners, they are much more positive about this. So I really try to stay positive. But like in my stomach, what I feel a little bit is like we will have this new aristocracy. Yeah. So we will have Bitcoiners and people who really understand what's happening. We will get richer on a real time basis, and for everybody else, the life will be much harder. And yeah, then hopefully at some point people feel enough pain to really get educated. But the problem is, if you are not educating yourself when you are well, I mean, imagine yourself being in a situation where you don't have shelter, you don't have food, you don't have nothing. Yeah, you're basically fighting for survival in the system. What do? You're not picking up a book and educating yourself about Bitcoin. Yeah, you are doing. You can do this in the state when you are like mentally at peace. Yeah, so I mean, I don't have, like super big hopes. I just, hope for a future where people at least have the choice. Yeah. Like, okay, if you want to live in this, I mean, if you're not educated about Bitcoin, you will live in this debt burden system. You will be a slave to the system, and so on and so on. But if there are people who really educate themselves about all of this, that at least we have the choice to opt out, right? Because I mean, I can imagine a world where they, like shut down all of the on-ramps, yeah, Coinbase, Kraken, and so on. And then people have to be even more technical to get Bitcoin. I mean, probably I will manage, yeah, I will find a way to establish a connection to a Bitcoin miner or whatever. I will have my smartphone with which I can use decentralized service. Probably like you, I have my Bitcoin in cold storage, right? Multi-signature and so on. So like nobody can steal my Bitcoin. So I will be fine. But, to get there are like so many hurdles for the average person that I think, like we still need like many technological advancements where all of this is like easy for like an average person, so we can build this decentralized world. Because right now we are still on the like trajectory to like a centralized world. So I think what we are doing right now, these podcasts, they're like super important for people to understand. Don't get emotional about left and right. Yeah. Only get emotional about centralized versus decentralized, and do everything in your power so you can stay like a sovereign and decentral individual.
I couldn't agree more. Very well said. And, I think what you're saying is, yes, the wonderful thing about Bitcoin is that it is there for anybody to opt in when they're ready. And that is why we do these podcasts, so that people who are ready can find it. Just have to trust that it doesn't get to that dire straits that you mentioned, when you don't even have time to even study, or you're on such a treadmill in the fiat world that that's what many people are doing right now. They're not looking But I do believe that there is something that leads us to these kind of things when we're ready. Many of my guests have said you get Bitcoin when you're ready for it. So it's here when they're ready. And on that note, what do you think our personal role is in all this?
Yeah, I have to be honest. Last year, I closed my old company. Currently, I have to say I'm a little bit state of transition where I'm thinking a little bit what's next. I mean, I'm in the lucky position that I had like past successes. So for me, it's not like, okay, I have to find something tomorrow, but I can really take my time. And I was also thinking a lot about doing something in the Bitcoin space, maybe a fund, maybe another project. So I was talking to a lot of people over the past weeks and months. At least, I mean, I know you guys in the US, you are far ahead in all of this. You have a lot of more companies in the Bitcoin space. But here in Europe, as you just said, like people get it when they're ready. But here in Europe, people are not ready. Here it's just like, it's too early. It's too difficult because, people don't like change. I think people on X make fun that in Europe, we are, let's just say, like an open museum. Yeah. You come here when you want to, when you want to experience the past. It's a little bit like this because people are like super resistant to change. And, like Bitcoin, as it is money, is like, as it is the core of everything, it's the biggest change you can make. So people will like resist it naturally if you are a European. So personally, I really try, like to do these podcasts to educate people, to tell people, look, like here in Europe, there are also people like you. You're not crazy. Yeah. All of this will work at some point. So, right now what I'm doing is I'm trying to share my knowledge, talk to people, whenever they want to podcast and so on. So more of this like an education role. And probably when it comes to, let's just say, I will probably stay in tech, yeah, because it's much easier to sell AI to people than it is to sell Bitcoin to people.
Well, and you wrote a book, so you're doing a lot.
There you go. There you go.
So do you think there's a spiritual side to Bitcoin?
Yeah, I mean, for me, Bitcoin is started to become a little bit like a religion, right? So I really think that you discover yourself because you will never stop learning once you are in Bitcoin. And to be quite frank, I mean, there are so many things for me to learn still, yeah, after all of these years, because there are so many like rabbit holes you can go into, and also I think. Like across all of the disciplines, engineering, biology, astrophysics, whatever it is, like whenever a person from any of these series come into Bitcoin, they put their own view on Bitcoin. And it's super interesting to read about it. I think I read, I unfortunately forgot the name of a person who was like Michael Saylor studying like thermodynamics. And this guy, he wrote like 20 blog posts, how Bitcoin is the perfect match for his theories and so on. And personally, I have no clue about thermodynamics, obviously, but I read all of this and I was like, man, this is so beautiful. This makes so much sense. So like, like to like learn Bitcoin through the lens of others, like never ceases to amaze me. And that's really, really cool. So for me, this really became like a spiritual journey that, there are things out there which are like bigger than yourselves because, with, I mean, I believe in God, but, as, like religion is hard to grasp. Bitcoin is easier to grasp because you have a financial ticker, right? God has no ticker, so it's easier. So it's easier to see the Bitcoin, but at least what you learn about it is that there are things out there which are like bigger than yourself. And as you said before, I really want to like help people, help humanity. And I think like spreading the word about sound money, about the benefits of Bitcoin and being sovereign and staying decentral, and all of these things. I really think, you cannot only describe this with words, but it's also, I think, this like feeling of freedom we all share. And I think this feeling is best described as spiritual rather than being, something material.
Yeah, I like that. So you've talked a lot about how Bitcoin has changed you, but I like to ask, how do you think Bitcoin has changed you most?
Yeah. I mean, before Bitcoin, I was always thinking long term, right? But Bitcoin makes it much easier to think long term because before, maybe I had an outlook of life. Where do I want to be in like 3 years, 4 years, 5 years? But since Bitcoin, I really think in decades. It sounds a bit crazy, yeah. But now I think, okay, where do I want to be in 10, 20, 30 years? Where will the world go? Also a little bit like, I think, you have to look outside in a little bit. What I mean by that is, Bitcoin helped me to find my own role, but not only, let's just say, like in my life, but also like in the world in general. Because before, you are like everybody, like all of us, we are only focused on ourselves. We are a little bit like, hey, I'm the most important person. What everybody else thinks more or less doesn't matter, or whatever. And then you start the first time you encounter Bitcoin, as Bitcoin is this system. You really understand, okay, how do we actually interact with each other? Okay, what is this person's role in the system? What is my role? Who am I? How can I contribute? Yeah. And then you start to think about others. So this really gave me this outlook, or this like worldview. Okay, I'm not alone. Like I'm here to contribute. And then when I'm like older, I wanna be able to say, look, like my life mattered. Yeah, I made a contribution, however big. But at the end of the day, I think like happiness comes from, but it's also something I learned. Yeah, happiness comes from like not like serving yourself, but like serving others. Because if you are able to serve others over a long time horizon, you will end up well. Like there are some people who are like thinking short term, they will you over or whatever. But if you're always, like have a positive spirit and you really want to help, people will also help you, because it goes both ways. And I think what is happiness? Long-term thinking, and I'm not alone, but I'm like a piece on a big chessboard. Yeah, these are the things which Bitcoin really really teach me.
I really like that, and yeah, I couldn't agree more. Bitcoin definitely makes me think of the whole much more, and how we're connected, and we are connected through the nodes, and we are connected through the network. Yeah, it's kind of cool. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. I'm going to post links to your book and to your X Twitter account. And is there anywhere else people can find you?
No, these are the main two things. I think if you want to follow my stuff, my thinking, on X, I'm posting like finance stuff, Bitcoin stuff, a little bit of philosophy, like thinking about people, how they change, how I change, and so on and so on. So X will definitely be the best place to follow.
Well, thank you so much. This has been a lot of fun.
Thank you, Paula. It was super nice to talk to you.